Imagine you are sitting at your desk and you have two simple choices in front of you. You can start working on an important task, or you can spend 10 minutes scrolling through your phone. Nothing dangerous is happening. Nobody is forcing you to choose. Yet somehow, making that tiny decision feels strangely difficult. You think about it, hesitate, change your mind, and then suddenly 20 minutes have passed. Why does something so simple sometimes feel mentally exhausting? The answer reveals something fascinating about how the human mind handles choices, attention, and mental energy. Your brain does not experience every decision as an isolated event. It constantly evaluates what a choice might cost, what it might lead to, and whether another option could be better. And when there are too many possibilities, the brain can become less efficient rather than more rational. This is one reason why having more choices does not always make us feel more free. Sometimes, it makes us feel more stuck. Think about the last time you opened a streaming app and searched for something to watch. You probably had hundreds of options. At first, that sounds perfect. More choices should mean a better chance of finding something you enjoy. But after scrolling through dozens of movies, reading titles, checking ratings, and watching trailers, you may eventually feel tired and choose nothing at all. This is related to what psychologists call choice overload. When the number of options becomes too large, the mental process required to compare them can become exhausting. Your brain has limited attention, and every comparison uses some of that attention. Choosing between 2 shirts is easy. Choosing between 50 shirts requires a completely different level of mental processing. The problem is not necessarily that you cannot decide. The problem is that your brain is trying to calculate too many possibilities at once. And there is another interesting part. The difficulty is not always caused by the number of choices. Sometimes it comes from how important the decision feels. Imagine choosing what to eat for lunch. You might decide within seconds. But imagine choosing a university, accepting a new job, moving to another city, or making a major purchase. Suddenly, your brain becomes much more cautious. You start imagining possible consequences. What if I choose incorrectly? What if another option would have been better? What if I regret this later? The decision becomes emotionally heavier because the potential consequences feel larger. This is where something called anticipated regret can influence our thinking. Before making a decision, the brain can imagine a future version of ourselves looking back and wishing we had chosen differently. That imagined regret can make us hesitate. Interestingly, sometimes we are not afraid of making the wrong decision itself. We are afraid of knowing that another decision might have been better. That subtle difference can keep people stuck between options for far longer than necessary. Imagine standing in a restaurant with 2 meals in front of you. One is something you already know you love. The other is something completely new. If the decision is small, you may simply pick one. But now imagine that the new meal is expensive and you have been saving money for weeks. Suddenly, the decision feels different. Your brain begins comparing the pleasure of trying something new with the safety of choosing something familiar. This is not irrational. It is the mind trying to balance reward, risk, uncertainty, and previous experience. Your brain also uses something called mental shortcuts. Psychologists often refer to these as heuristics. Instead of carefully calculating every possible outcome, the brain uses simplified rules that usually help us make decisions faster. These shortcuts are extremely useful because without them, everyday life would become overwhelming. Imagine having to consciously analyze every road before crossing it, every person you meet, every food you eat, and every sentence you speak. You would barely have enough mental capacity left for anything else. So the brain simplifies. It says, in effect, this looks familiar, this worked before, this seems safe, this seems important. These shortcuts save energy, but they can also influence our choices in ways we do not always notice. For example, imagine 2 products sitting next to each other. One has a simple package and an unfamiliar name. The other has a design that looks premium and a brand you recognize. Without reading every detail, you may immediately feel that one product is more trustworthy. Your brain has made a rapid judgment using limited information. That judgment may sometimes be useful, but it does not guarantee that the familiar product is actually better. This is one reason why our first impressions and quick judgments can be powerful without necessarily being accurate. The same thing happens when we make assumptions about ourselves. Imagine someone who has failed at something several times. They may begin thinking, I'm just not good at this. Notice what happened there. A few experiences became a conclusion about identity. The brain loves efficient explanations, so instead of analyzing every individual experience, it may create a simple story. But a simple story is not always a complete story. Maybe the person lacked practice. Maybe the method was wrong. Maybe the timing was bad. Maybe the goal was unrealistic. The brain can turn repeated experiences into beliefs, and those beliefs can then influence future behavior. This is why the way we describe our experiences matters. Saying, "I failed at this attempt," is very different from saying, "I am a failure." The first statement describes an event. The second turns the event into an identity. Psychology teaches us that human behavior is influenced by interpretation. Two people can experience something similar and give it completely different meanings. One person may see a mistake as evidence that they need a different strategy. Another may see the same mistake as proof that they are incapable. The event is similar, but the psychological meaning is different. And this brings us to another fascinating feature of decision-making. Sometimes the best way to make a decision is to reduce the number of decisions you have to make. This is why routines can be useful, even though we are not talking about predictable routines controlling the brain. A routine can simply remove unnecessary choices. If you already know when you work, where you work, and what you normally do first, you do not have to spend mental energy deciding those things every day. The goal is not to eliminate flexibility. It is to protect attention for the decisions that actually deserve it. Think about professional athletes. They do not decide from scratch every time how they will warm up, train, recover, or prepare for competition. Many parts of their process are structured. That structure does not mean they have lost freedom. It means they have reduced unnecessary mental noise. The same principle can apply to ordinary life. When small decisions are handled automatically, your attention can be directed toward bigger problems that require creativity and judgment. But there is a deeper lesson here. We often assume that good decisions come from thinking more. Sometimes they do, but thinking more is not automatically the same as thinking better. If you repeatedly compare the same options without gaining new information, you may simply be creating more mental noise. There is a difference between thoughtful reflection and endless analysis. Reflection adds information or perspective. Endless analysis often repeats the same questions without changing the evidence. Imagine you are deciding whether to start a new project. You research the topic, compare your options, think about the risks, and make a reasonable plan. At some point, you have enough information to begin. But instead of acting, you continue searching for the perfect strategy. Another video, another article, another opinion, another comparison. Eventually, research becomes a substitute for action. The brain can make this feel productive because you are still thinking about the goal. But thinking about a decision and moving toward a decision are not always the same thing. This does not mean you should make every decision quickly. Some decisions deserve patience. The important distinction is whether additional thinking is actually improving the decision. If new information could change your choice, more research may be valuable. If you are simply repeating the same concerns, the extra thinking may not be helping. And perhaps the most interesting part is that your brain is not designed to give you perfect certainty. It is designed to help you function despite uncertainty. You will never have complete information about another person's reaction, the future of a project, the outcome of a career decision, or exactly how you will feel 6 months from now. Waiting until every variable is known can mean waiting forever. So the next time you find yourself stuck between choices, pause for a moment. Instead of asking, "What is the perfect decision?" ask yourself, "What information would actually change my decision?" If there is something important missing, find it. If there is no meaningful information left to collect, recognize that the remaining discomfort may simply be the normal feeling of making a choice without complete certainty. Because that is one of the most misunderstood things about decision-making. Feeling uncertain does not automatically mean you are making a bad decision. Feeling nervous does not automatically mean something is wrong. Sometimes, it simply means the decision matters to you. Your brain will always try to protect your time, energy, and future. It will use shortcuts, compare possibilities, imagine consequences, and search for safer paths. Those systems are not your enemies. They are part of what makes human thinking possible. The goal is not to fight your brain or control every thought it produces. The goal is to understand what it is doing. Once you understand that, small decisions can become easier to recognize for what they really are. Not battles you have to win against yourself, but moments where your mind is trying to evaluate limited information in a complicated world. And sometimes, the smartest thing you can do is not find the perfect choice. It is simply make a reasonable one. Learn from what happens next, and allow your brain to update its understanding from real experience.